Hello, everyone. This is Ballin with Bill Dannenhauer here. Thank you, Sideline Power, for the opportunity to do this. And I have a great opportunity to visit with one of Nebraska's finest head coaches in my mind. He's done great wherever. I met him back when he was at Burke with Coach Oled, right?
Yep, Coach O, yep.
Yep. And then he went to, of course, Fort Calhoun after that. Now he's done an amazing job at Bellevue West. Welcome, Coach Huffman.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Bill.
All right.
I'm ready to ball with Bill. Let's go.
All right. First question I always like to ask. Tell me about where you grew up, your football, how you ended up progressing, and then moving to become a football coach.
Actually, a pretty unique story. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, but my family was not into athletics. They were in the hunting, fishing, cars. Dad was a mechanic. Mom worked on the packing line. Both my brothers were car mechanics. In small world, in Northwest Omaha, I grew up with a guy named Damon Benning. Most folks around here know Damon.
Oh, yeah.
And Damon's baseball team needed a catcher, and I was a short, chubby little thing, so I played catcher. And the next fall, we started playing tackle football. And his dad, Don Benning, a long time.
My dad, Don, are good friends.
Yep, NAIA National Coach of the Year, national champion. So I was blessed to get into sports through them. I went to Burke High School back in the day, where you could only have a couple choices. It was either go play baseball for Bill Olson or play football for Larry Jacobson, and I loved football. And, oh, man, what a role model. Him, Dave Stadola, just some really good coaches, and I fell in love with it. And just how they treated kids and, the tough aspect of football. So I followed their path. And I would giggle. I'd come back and visit coaches. And, no, you got to get out of that. It's a tough night. Man, I wouldn't want to do anything else. I oftentimes joke with my wife, if I wasn't coaching football right now and teaching at Bellevue, I have no clue what I'd be doing. So it's also nice knowing you don't feel like you work a day in your life either. This Thanksgiving break's been great, but I'm ready to get back to work.
Gotcha. I hear you. Where'd you go to college at?
Funny story. So I did play both at Burke. I played football and baseball. We had a very successful program. When Northwest didn't win, they won state my sophomore and junior year, and as a senior at Burke, we won state in baseball. And I actually went to Kearney to play UNK for Guy Murray. I figured out
you did go for Guy.
Yep, I figured out very quickly that I wasn't good enough to play college baseball. In my heart of hearts, I wish I would have did the Dana, the Doan, the Hastings football, but I was young and dumb. And being the only one in my family that went to college at that point, I saw D2 Kearney being better than NAIA GPAC, and man, I couldn't have been more wrong. But I played fall ball. It was not going to work. I mean, it was, you got to be able to hit a breaking ball to play in college. You can't just sit on fastballs. So I made it through the fall, but I love the people out at UNK so much, and very pleased with what Coach Lynn's doing out there right now, getting into the metro recruiting, because I think that's an area that will continue to help, as they call it, the rise of UNK, to get in here to the metro. I got a couple guys out there. One there currently, one going there next year. So loved it there. Came back, got a job right away. The principal at Burke, Karen Bermude, was still there, and there was a human growth and development job opening. And so I talked about some interesting things for the first 8 years of my career, things I didn't ever plan on talking about with high school students, but they need those lessons as well. Then finally got a PE job. I did a little elementary PE as well. So it's been great. Worked for Coach O, like we mentioned.
Tell me about your experience, Coach. Because I know Coach O since he was Omaha South. And I was down at Washburn. I used to recruit his athletes down there, so I've known Coach O a long time.
What a brilliant X's and O's guy.
Yeah.
The way he taught us to prepare. I mean, the amount of time that we spent in film and him just listening to him and what he was looking for. I mean, you couldn't replace those lessons.
Right.
And that's probably what I regret most about not going the NAIA football route, is learning from those position coaches in those meetings.
Right.
Because I didn't get that, and I wasn't smart enough then to go volunteer at Kearney High or walk into Daryl Morris's, or at that time Claire Boroff's office, and say, hey, what can I do to help for free, right? Hindsight's 2020. But I got that indoctrination with Coach O, and Bill James. You remember Bill? Long time.
God,
he was actually the DC when I got there, and he was hired.
That's right.
And so I learned from those two guys.
Bill's one of the best.
Oh yeah, and when Coach O deemed me worthy, then I took over the defense, and man, we had a fun ride. And he decided to retire. They hired a guy named Coach Paul Lamanji, who's also highly successful. But I figured out quickly, okay, Coach is about my age. And if I want to be a career assistant, this is a great place to stay. If not, then I need to get on my way. And I went to Fort Calhoun, a guy named Jerry Green, got an assistant principal job, and at the Fort they don't let you do both. You know, some small schools they do. So he had to lose the football title, and
Right.
his one stipulation was he was going to hire the replacement. In small world, a dean at Burke, Donnie Morrison, his brother Bill Morrison was the
Okay.
head coach basketball at the Fort. PE wanted to move back to the city, so he took that Millard West actually freshman boys basketball job, and
That's
now he's
right.
the head coach now. But it opened up a PE football, and I guess as they say, the rest is kind of history. I mean, it was fun 5 years in the Fort. Now my wife almost chopped my fingers off because she's from Ponca, Nebraska, which is 1,000 C2, and she moved to Omaha to get out of that, and I moved her right back to it. So yeah, that was that 5 years. Great people, thank goodness. Jerry and Jody Green, Don Johnson. Oh, thank goodness, because otherwise, I think if looks could kill, I'd be a dead man.
I don't know what that looks like. So when you first got your head job, your first opportunity, what'd you do? Go in there and what'd you start? What'd you build? How'd you start building your platform to build your program?
It's all about the weight room. It really is. You got to have complete buy-in from not just your football players, all the sports there, because especially in a small school like that, they all play everything.
Right.
You know, but it also makes it easier because they all play everything. You get to see everybody all the time, and that's the number one thing. My first year, I actually ran the same offense that I learned from Coach O, but I figured out quickly to run the old Nebraska offense, you got to have better linemen than everybody else, and you better have a great back. And no offense to Fort Calhoun, but over the years they didn't have that. You know, they had the Bajowski boys that were really good, but after that it's some not so great football. And so I fell in love with the Oregon spread. A guy named Scott Strohmeyer, most everybody knows,
Yeah,
Iowa
Scott's a
Western.
good friend.
He ran some clinics that I happened to go to, and I just fell in love with it. And it's funny because I'm that age that grew up playing those video games, and you'd play the Bill Walsh football, and then it moved into the college football. You never picked the Power I team. You always were out there doing the shred, the gun and all that stuff. I'm like, well, why wouldn't I try to coach a style that I actually enjoyed? And it's really not that whole lot different.
No.
I do enjoy the gun. I enjoy throwing the ball, but I love running the ball out of the spread. And it's just worked. And so Fort Calhoun had a decent basketball program. I got those kids to play. We had a good time. We did learn to chuck it around, and what receiver doesn't like to catch the ball?
Right.
So that was an easy sell.
That's a good way to get those basketball players out.
100%. And then everybody knows that Bellevue West is a basketball school.
Yeah.
So it was an easy transition. It really helped having guys like C.J. Johnson there right away, and Malik Haluchawecki, two of his Coach Woodard's best basketball players, were receivers. And boy, we're chucking it all over. They're like, ooh, this is sweet. They had not known about the jet sweep. Boy, they like the jet sweep. So that's another play. But, I was glad to see the Huskers do that with Xavier Betts. He's ran that play 100 times at Bellevue West, and, he's done a pretty good job with it. So, you have to make the game fun. Early in my coaching career, really hard-nosed, and I still love the physicality of football. But, man, you gotta play for fun. The kids have too many choices nowadays. I have a second grader now. And, man, his buddies are all into select basketball already. They're getting into baseball. And, heck, all we've done is play flag football. So football, if you don't get it going and make sure they have a good time, there's not enough room on their plate when they get older to play.
Right.
So it's actually something that I'm navigating right now with my second grade son, and then my offensive line coach, Mike Pokorski, has a fourth grade son.
Okay.
And to see what's out there for these kids right now, it's our sport. If we don't get some stuff figured out and make sure it's a good time, I giggle. We have 5 jerseys and 3 pants. We play music at practice. I enjoy it now. Now when the internet stream isn't working and it's quiet at practice, I feel like, man, am I going to a wake or what's going on here? And we don't play it loud enough that it's just background filler noise. But the kids like it. But you got to do things like that. We only live for an hour in the off season. And no offense to some of the guys I work for.
How do you do that now? Do you go more days a week? Or
we go 4 days a week, 3:30 to 4:30, and we're done. I mean, the days of keeping them there till 5:30 in February are over. And who else likes that? Your wives. Because you get home.
Come home.
At
Not up to the gym all the time.
But even practice, all our guys, we only go one way. Our coaches all coach one way. Now there's some 10th graders and then a handful of kids that might play a little bit of both. But we're in out of practice, 2 hours, 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Yeah, so I did the same thing at Dan. I didn't like being there long either.
No, it's like, and again, I learned more football than I could ever imagine, but we'd have 3 hour and 15 minutes, 3 hour and 30 minute practices.
I did as a player too.
Yeah, and you're not going to keep kids out doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
At least at most places.
Right. So what, in the changing times, and I know it's changed a lot since I coached, played, and you played, coached, and you now that you're coaching all these years. What type of rules or what do you kind of set up as your platform and your program so kids have a thing to follow? What do you do in today's time?
Well, they got to be there, man. That's where it all starts. You know, strength training I still think is the key to high school football. Now we've been blessed with some super freaks. You know, Jalen Bradley was amazing. I talked about CJ and Malik, Xavier Betts, who's down at Nebraska now. Those kids are really, really talented. And then you combine the weight room with them, then you got some business. But most of our players, just like everybody else, is just that average high school football player that gets in the weight room. He lifts. We usually go 11 months a year. And he's just strong, and he works hard, and he's tough because you can't replicate being under 400 pounds of steel when you're squatting. You know, that makes 4th and 1 a little bit easier than these, you know. It was funny because I've got some friends that coach other schools, and they got into the bands, and they got into the ropes, and they got into the sleds, and all that stuff. You got to lift weights, man. You got to bench press.
I'm an weight coach.
You got to squat, and you got to. I personally hang clean just because power clean. There's just so many little things that can go wrong with their injuries.
You got that deadlift part of it. You got to worry about.
We do the trap bar deadlift instead of the straight bar deadlift,
which I think is more safe.
I think so too, and that's really what it comes down to. You know,
you don't get the bar away from you like you do with the regular deadlift.
It's there's just some things, and at the end of the day, and I joke with the kids because I'll have some kids whose dads, well, we deadlifted straight bars. Well, that's great. And if you want to do that with your kid outside of our time, feel free to do that.
That's right.
But what I've learned over the years, a hurt kid doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do your team do any good.
He's not in the weight room.
It doesn't do them any good. But they got to be there. And I think if I had to point out something that I think that we do really, really well at Bellevue West is the way we coach the talented kid. You guys have so much talent. You're right. We do. We have open enrollment. Kids, if they want to, if they can get there, they can come to our school. But there is a talent to coaching talent. Because if you let the talented kids do anything, your whole program's going to be terrible. They end up controlling them. Yeah, and we actually are harder on our talented kids because they need to be the guys that are in the weight room. They need to be the guys that are making sure the racks are pushed in, the weights are put away, and things of that nature. Because when the average kid, and again, that's 85% of your team,
that's
is the average kid,
and they're going to follow the other
and they see that, they're like, okay, because if you let things slack, and the average kid starts slacking. No, you're never. Friday nights are rough. Yeah, Friday nights are rough.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that people forget about. That's Vince did the same thing. When you look at Lombardi, now he was hard on everybody, but he was harder on the better for the same reason. Well, and I think Belichick's the same way.
Yep, absolutely. And those guys, people actually end up liking it because they like every human being likes the accountability piece. They might not like it at the start, but okay, we tell them all the time: if we're done riding you, and we're quiet, okay. Something's happened, and they'll all repeat. Coach don't care anymore.
Right.
Because you go on to the next kid that's going to give you what you need.
Right.
And we've been blessed. We've had enough talent to be able to get away with that. And actually, we haven't had to do very much of that. I mean, most of the kids figured out they want to be coached.
Right.
Great kids want to be coached.
Yeah.
So it's been a good situation there, and we want to keep going. You give them a couple of weeks off. Our hearts were broken. An unexpected loss that hasn't happened very much to us. And they've had a couple of weeks off, and now it's time to get back to work tomorrow.
Yeah. I hear you. So now you're kind of a little bit like me because I grew up in the I offense at UNO, and that's what I always believed in too. And then I got to a situation like Dana where I didn't always, I didn't have the linemen or enough people, but I could get receivers and stuff. So I developed it, and kind of like Scott Strohmeyer developed that one back offense. So tell us how that's progressed, and you've done some amazing things with it, and how you changed it every year.
It's if you really, and this because I'm sure you did the same thing at Dana. If you cut out everything else and just look at the 5 linemen, so many of the blocking principles are the same.
Oh, they don't change.
My favorite football play is guard tackle pull.
It's still mine.
It is, and
I love it when teams do that.
Now the only difference is now we're in the gun, and now our quarterback is reading that edge defender.
Right.
So
we had to block that edge defender.
Yeah, we had to. Remember, old Phil block and stuff like that. Now another thing is, this is from my 12 years of being a defensive coordinator, is I don't ever run 2-back, ever. Because what I've learned over the years is, we used to do all our strengths and everything by the tight end. He's strong, right? Strong. Now it's by number of backs in the backfield. I watch what Coach McVay does with our defense. He doesn't care if it's a tight end. He cares if it's 1 back. Okay, what's the personnel package? And so we keep everything like that. Now you lose the ability to fill block, but you also can read that guy. And then the evolution So I've been doing that ever since I was at Fort Calhoun, brought it to Bellevue West. Well, the evolution now is the backside RPOs.
Right.
So I don't particularly want my quarterback running the football. Now, if it's a certain down and distance, or like we talk about November football, then we don't have a choice. And if you got
He's going to have to put it down.
you got to go. But we have another layer of reads built into what the hanger does. Okay, if you've had to pull the ball, they've only got so many people left to cover the receivers, and so if that guy's coming at you, we throw it. If he goes out to cover it, then you're running. And I give him one, and you get one shake, get down or get out of bounds, and it's kind of funny because we had a kid. Oh, I think it was the Columbus game. He breaks a 60-yard run and literally runs out of bounds. And I'm like, you could have outran that kid. You tell us not to get hit. I'm like, you're right. Next time score. No, but they're listening. Oh, yeah. No, boy, he got him so much fun of. But you don't want to take those extra shots because quarterback play is special, and it's hard to get the right guy, especially with what we do in the throwing game.
Yeah. Those are the reads.
We only got to play 7 games, but we are well on our way to throwing for 3,000 yards again. And we've thrown for 3,000 yards 6 out of the 7 years. Now we didn't get there this year because we played 7 games, but we were well on our way. Get through for 1,500 yards in 7 games and multiple touchdowns. And you have to start training that early mentally. And we start in February with just literally sitting there and watching huddle with the kids in my office. Okay, this is what we're looking at. This is what coverage is this, and what's the weaknesses of this. And I watch a lot of NFL now because my son's really starting to like football, and I've never watched NFL before the last 2 years. And you hear him talking about the whole shot. You can't lob the whole shot. You got to bullet the whole shot. And it makes me feel
it doesn't go in there right
because we're teaching 10th through 12th grade quarterbacks that at Bellevue West. So I feel good about what we're doing there.
So has a teaching progression? I mean, because you look at it. When I was coaching quarterbacks, the progressions, some kids could get that right away, and other kids would really struggle with it, especially when it was live.
Yep. And
so, how do you handle that? How do you work with that now?
It's interesting that you say that because going into the season, we had 3 quarterbacks, and I had no idea who it was going to be. And especially with all the gurus that are out there now to take these kids' time, which whatever. I mean, we can't do it. I mean, that's what the state requires these kids to do if they really want to play some football, right? They got to go pay somebody else to coach them because their high school coach can only have 4 or 5 guys. Oh, otherwise we're cheating. Blah blah blah.
Right.
But I had one kid that's amazing in drills. He is unbelievable. You can tell he spent probably since he was in 5th grade going to one of these gurus. He's fantastic. And we'd get into the office and we'd be reading the coverages. Okay, where's the safety? Oh yeah, this is cover 2. Oh, it's cover 2 man because look at the corners coach. They're staring at the receivers, and I mean it's awesome. 7-on-7 has really helped a lot of things.
Right.
And he would do okay in 7-on-7. But then when you put
the
buffet busters in front, and now someone's
I like that, like the buffet busters.
Right, someone's right. Yeah, I always told the lineman, man, if you walk into a buffet and that manager is not like looking at you funny, then you're not really a lineman.
That's right.
You should be breaking that guy. That guy should be, dang it. Whatever. We call ours the Thunder Hogs, man, and we want.
I like the buffet busters. I
awesome.
remember that one.
But he struggled, and he knew what he was doing. But Coach Frost will call it the quick blinkers. And then I had another kid that he wasn't great in the drills. He was okay in 7-on-7, but when it came to full 11-on-11 football, well, he just didn't make very many mistakes. Now he also didn't make very many explosive plays because he was quick to come off the reads and take off running. And he struggled with the deep ball because his arm wasn't strong enough. But then the third guy, he's pretty good in drills, and he's pretty good in 7-on-7. But he had he had a cannon, and then he hadn't been with us very long, so the longer. And then, of course, the Rona, you didn't get the whole off season. I tried to do like we're doing here. I tried to do hour Zooms with the quarterbacks on Thursdays and receivers on Fridays. Here, I think I'm being the genius coach. We're taking advantage of this not being in school, and we finally get back. I'll never forget it, June 21st, because we actually got in trouble for this. I'll be interested to hear your take on this. They opened up open gym for the sports. What would you consider open gym for football? Can you throw a football in open gym?
No, you got to go outside.
Well, yeah, open turf then.
Okay.
Can you throw a football?
Yes.
Yeah, so we thought that too. We knew we couldn't cover each other because you had to keep social distance.
Right.
So we were throwing route concepts on air. And we have another super freak coming. Davon Hall has got a scholarship offer to Iowa as a freshman. And
what position does he play?
He's a receiver.
Wow.
50-inch box jump going into 9th grade. And yes, it's
50
50-inch box jump.
Holy
yeah,
cow.
standing box
Wow.
jump. Yeah, he's a freak. And Mike Sauter, formerly the World Herald, now on his own or through with somebody, whoever he's with now, caught wind of him, wanted to see him. So, hey, we're throwing tomorrow. Come on out. We're not supposed to throw a ball, evidently. So, sorry.
Why?
Because that wasn't part of the rules they allowed us to do, which I know half the city did, but whatever. It is what it is.
You know, they done some coaches down in Arkansas. He's the offensive coordinator down there. They could throw the ball, but they had to wipe the balls down after every caught pass.
Man.
So they're out there with these wipes wiping the balls.
Hey, well, there's some days that's not a bad deal because this was the first. I've never seen so many balls hit the ground as they did this year. I don't know what those kids did. They didn't buffet bust anything because they came back skinny, which I gained 7 pounds looking at a pizza, 10 if I eat it.
And so they didn't gain anything.
Right, I guess ridiculous, but the 7-on-7s helps, but they got to be able to do it in front of the 11-on-11 just because there's a lot of people coming at them.
I had the same thing. Kids would you'd recruit a kid and you get him there and he'd look great. He had a nice arm, but you'd put them guys in front of him. He just couldn't.
Yeah. I think,
and then other kids you'd be surprised would get in that front of that thing. Those people would come.
Well, that's one of the negatives of the off-campus 7-on-7 stuff, and I do like them because where else can football's football, man.
Right.
That's how you get better. Right. I mean, you can't just go. I guess you can throw in your backyard, but it's not the same. So I enjoy what like any elite and what Steve Warren at Warren Academy are doing with the 7-on-7s.
He does some nice things.
But the problem is those guys are now listening to different people's schemes and what they're looking at, and right, wrong, or indifferent. I like what we've built at Bellevue. I played offensive guard and inside linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
And so the throwing progressions have to make sense in my eyes.
Right.
Some of these reads, you see, okay, they're here, and then all of a sudden they're looking over there. How does that make any sense when you've got 5 to 7 dudes running at you full speed? It makes no sense.
You better
to
have
me.
a great offensive line.
And right. And in high school, we know how that goes. I mean, especially when we choose to play. That's one of the. It's funny that you bring that up, and I'm all over the place, Bill. This is just. I love talking football. I talk all day. We made the change in 2015 after we lost yet another game that was ridiculously high scoring. We lost on a 2-point conversion in the semifinals. Probably still our best offensive team in 2015.
Yeah, you had a nice offense.
But we moved. We make sure, regardless of what our offensive line looks like, we're going to put 2 bad mama jamas at the 3 technique in the nose.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a big believer, and I know
Get in the face.
I know the 3-man fronts the way, but we've done it. We did it for 2 years. We'll never do it again. I want 4 hands in the dirt. Okay, and I want some dudes in there because there's just less places to run. There's just not as many. We love, we don't always beat a 3-man front because you don't ever win all your games. But man, when we pop on film and we see a 3-man front, we're like, okay, we're gonna be able to run the ball tonight.
Yeah, because you can get the gaps.
Yeah, you just can't, especially when you're reading.
Yeah, that 3 technique and nose.
Oh,
you get
baby.
2 good ones, they can make happen. And that's hard on the quarterback too because they get that push in that pocket.
And I'll tell you what, our offensive line coach, he gets mad at me sometimes. He wants to move our nose guard over to offense. Look, we're not going to do it. We're going to leave those 2 guys in there, and they are going to make life miserable for opponents. We got most of our team back, so we're pretty excited about 2021. Now, if we could ever just get rid of these doggone masks and all this other stuff, I mean, it's just. Oh man, I want to put my head through a wall, but you got to do what
The
you
shots are coming.
I know. I've been doing a lot of internet search. I just hope it's right.
Yes, that's what Mark and I say. Hope everything's right because it's going to be here before too long.
It sounds like February.
Should be to health workers and all that should be here in December.
Even sooner. Yep. Let's hope, man.
Let's hope. So now you were started as a DC.
Yep.
I remember that's when I first met you.
Best thing that ever happened.
So tell me how your defense have evolved through your years. Because I've noticed that because I've seen you run 3-man fronts. I've seen you run. Now you've been cutting up. You've really progressed to the 4-man front.
And I hadn't thought about
because you used to run the 35. I remember that when I first met you.
This is what cracks me up. Actually, when I first started with Coach Olent and Coach James, and it's so amazing. I didn't think about this till right now how things come full circle. We ran a 4-3.
Yeah, Coach James was a 4-3 guy.
We ran a 4-3, and I just remember how hard at that time it was to stop the run. And the problem is if you don't have that 3 technique in that nose, and you better have a pretty good middle linebacker.
Oh, yeah.
And so we didn't have that. And so we transitioned. Coach O, another thing that I really appreciate that he taught me is you're a lifelong learner of football. Yeah. And the number of clinics, I absolutely love going to clinics. I love the camaraderie of your own coaching staff. I love the camaraderie of seeing the other coaches from other schools there. I've spoke at your guys' clinic before. I love giving back like that. But I've been to the Powered Up Clinic every year. I go to a couple other ones every single year. But we went to, I want to say it was Chicago. And Chicago it was basically 4-4 land back then.
Oh, yeah.
And so I heard Washington speak. Hey, Don James, right? And it wasn't him, but it was one of his assistants, and it was Virginia Tech, and it was Bud Foster. And who knew? I know how cool is that? Looking back now, I was just a young guy, and so we went all in on the 4-4, and I actually ran that the rest of the time I was at Burke. When Coach Lamanji came to Burke, he was a 4-4 guy, so that melted perfect, and I got to learn some new ways to coach it, so that was super cool. I ran that the whole time that I was at Fort Calhoun, but when I got to Bellevue West,
that's when you started messing with
we ran it. We started going with the 3,
yeah.
And I do like it. I do like the 3. So we have 3-man implemented into some of our stuff. But man, remember what I said about the 4-man front? You better have a nose and a 3, right? Boy, you better have 3 studs.
You only got 3 of them, so they better all 3 be good. Yes, I agree.
They better be good. And if they're not huge, which we just don't have that breed of animal at any school I've ever been at, they better be extremely
athletic.
That nose better be a killer. Yeah, right? And it was too hard.
He's got to force 2 people to block him every time.
We got tired of losing games. We're 74-14 at Bellevue West, and we've lost 7 games where we've scored 40 points or more. I mean, that is atrocious. Now, it'd be really cool if we would have won those, because that'd be cool. But
that's a lot of points.
But
a lot of yards,
but that goes back to philosophy, though. I was a defensive DC for 12 years. I was all about back then, man, a 13-10 game, man. You're like, well, yeah, that was awesome. Now, man, I think I'd cut off a toe if we won 13-10. I'd be so mad. I want it to be exciting. I want it to be fun. Now I have learned.
That's funny.
Again, losing 7 games where you scored 40 points. Okay, you need to give the defense some guys too. And then, there's been a couple years, because I do think receivers can play both sides of the ball. They can play a safety. They can play a corner. I do not think a running back can, because I need that running back to go 80.
Fresh.
I need him to be able to go 80 at any point during the game.
Yeah.
And the number of games, you've seen a lot of our games, it'll be the fourth quarter. It'll be a sweet game. And the next thing you know, Bradley bumps off an 81 and a 60-yard, and now we're up by 3 scores with 2 minutes left.
Just like that.
And everybody else plays these running backs all over the place. I don't believe in it. Now, I think there is 0 chance for a high school lineman to play both ways at the level that you need him to play to win in November. Now, does that mean a Tyler Sherray, for instance, can come in and play nose guard at the goal line? Yeah, he could do that. But he's not going to be out there in the rest of the
When Millard West, that kid that plays for the Bills now.
Whole different.
That
but
guy.
Those kids don't come around.
No, that's
often.
a rarity too.
I even look at the best ones that we've had. Because I let Sherray play a little bit of goal line. I let Vanderslice play a little bit of short yardage. But otherwise, we're not going to do it with Mike O'Reilly. He's the kid that's got all the Power 5. I think he's got 18 Power 5 offers. He's 6'6", 240. Now kid. He's an unbelievable tight end. He's fluid. He is nasty. We're probably going to teach him to play a little bit of defensive in the pass rush.
Okay.
Just because it's one place that we struggle. We're so adamant about stopping the run at Bellevue West that I think there's something that we're not teaching great when it comes to pass rush, because unless we blitz, we don't get much, and our players are good. We're not playing with some Joe Schmo, so we've got to get better at that. But hey, that's what clinics are for.
That's right.
I get just as much out of the sessions as sitting out in the lobby, shooting the breeze with some. Hey, how do you teach this here? And I almost like that even more. But the clinic's what brings you together and does that. So like how you guys have like breakout rooms and stuff like that. Those are fantastic.
I just think, and I love seeing all you guys. I mean,
I do too.
This year when we had to go to everything on Zoom and do all that stuff, I thought, oh my God. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the talking to coaches. Even though I don't coach anymore, I still miss talking to you guys.
The first 2 weeks, I probably did. You guys were doing the dailies, from different coaches across the country. Yeah. I probably did in the first 14 days. I bet you I did 11 of them. But then by the end, I was just like over it. I'm like,
because it's a session, but you don't get asked the coach, questions. You get to plug them in, but it ain't the same where you sit down and say, if you don't understand it, what are you trying to say? What
you don't get to leave the room and say, hey, let's go talk about that more out there,
right?
And stuff like that.
So you understand the steps to it and everything that goes along with it, because there's a lot of things that they don't always go over that is so important when you're talking that technique. I mean,
You know, and it's interesting you say that because you have to really, especially like I really enjoy speaking at clinics, but you also have to be very careful. Like you
well, I
want
know
to
because when you spoke, everybody in Nebraska
oh,
was
did you
in
see
there.
that? It
Yeah.
was unbelievable. And you know what? Yeah, it's a very important to me that you're going to leave my session with something that you can use.
Right.
And I did. I gave now there are some little things, you know, about body angles and stuff like that. I'm not going to share that in there. You only get that.
Because you got
now,
all the head coaches that you compete against.
Yep,
in there.
right. And you know, like a good friend of mine is Kurt Frenzen from Columbus Lakeview.
Right.
You know, twice now he's come down to my house and spent 6 hours, or I went up to his house and spent 3 or 4 hours. That's different, you know. And again, we're not competing with each other.
No.
But you know, like when I look out there and I see Coach Peterson from Miller West in the second row, and when he's leaving, he's got 2 pages worth of stuff. I'm like, great. You know, what am I going to have to do?
West
now?
Side was there.
Oh no, it's unbelievable.
West was there.
Everybody,
Yeah.
and but that's also awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that they're there getting, you know, some ideas and things like that. You never stop learning in football. The game is always evolving. And you know, I was watching the Chiefs yesterday and their RPOs, and they got a dang lineman 12-yard, and of course it gets called in the NFL. You know, how long until us high school guys can't do that? You know, we for whatever reason get called for it all the time, so I don't have a whole lot of that kind of RPO anymore. But
They don't
you know,
get the Chiefs. Yeah, they got called for it the one time I saw.
yeah, boy, he's fun to watch. Holy smokes! But he's also bad for kids to watch because
He does
all
something.
these, you know, like, yeah, hey,
Thrown off the back. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, my son brags because we had a bunch of people over.
That's so
We had
true.
our neighbor and then a kid from his flag football team over, and hey, Dad, when I was all-time quarterback, I looked this way and I threw it to Ethan this way, and I'm like, never do that again. You know,
He
but
does some things.
that's
He does
how-
some things that that you can't explain.
No, it's unbelievable. And his, you know, little back pedals at angles to get more, and then he throws it off his back, and he still throws it harder. All 3 of us combined. I mean, it's just like unbelievable. He's got some talents.
Yeah. He
That
got.
99% of the population.
Oh,
doesn't
I know,
have.
and it's amazing that Texas Tech didn't win more with him when he was down there. Because I remember watching him against Arkansas, and he came back against Arkansas, and Arkansas was really good that year, and beat him. And he single hand just did some things like you said. Dude, that guy's for real.
I would like to see, you know, because it's interesting that you say that. First of all, the Big 12 is so fun. I do kind of miss the Big 12. Just because.
I wish we were still there. I think
right?
we talk about
But
that around
I
here. We
wonder
still
how
should
many.
be
So
there.
I brought up the stat that we've lost 7 games and we've scored more than 40 points. I wonder how many Texas Tech losses were because they got beat in the shootout.
Oh, a
Because
ton.
maybe their defense. Because man, the Big 12's no joke when it comes to scoring. Man, you don't ever turn off one of those games.
No, I know. Well,
I'm too old. I fall asleep. I wake up. I'm like,
especially
what?
Friday night. What the heck? We're not on
Sunday
points,
morning college football rewind's my favorite show. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Would have never guessed that.
No, I mean that's true. They probably lost a ton of games in the last
I wonder.
series or two because they put 30-40 up there too, and the problem is they don't stop people.
No, but man, it's exciting. And so, but, you know, back to earlier we were talking. You have to make the kids got to want to play. There's so many struggles for their time, so it's really important to us that we have an exciting brand.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds super cheesy, but we have a guy named Steve Lemon. He's a math teacher. He's our head tennis coach, but he does he was so bummed. He was supposed to do some volleyball games for Nebraska, like PA announcing. So he does that at our home football games. And you want to talk about a guy, if you're going to do something, do it right, man. He's got an iPad with like 360 music things on it that have like different cuts, and like we're playing third down music. We're doing all this other stuff. Like the whole environment is different. There's been a couple times where whether it be his tennis tournament or whatever, he's gotten there a little bit late, and like it's just not right. And then so I told you my sister and my nephew plays for Elkhorn South, and so she goes to one of our games, and then they go to their games. Like their games are just so much more fun. I'm like, well, you guys won. It's like, yeah, but like your dude plays music and all this other stuff. I'm like, we want the whole environment. We want it all, man. Heck, I want these laser down things so I can just looks better. God dang it! Come on, Mr. Morrow. I hope you see this. Don't fire me.
Don't be sure he sees it then. But anything else you want to add, Coach?
No, it's just good time. I love talking ball. I hope the
I do.
clinics,
I really
hope the
appreciate you
clinics
coming
get
out
rolled.
today.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great game, and you've done it for life. And now that I have, it's just something you want to always be able to give back to. And I do. I think it's the best game. I love all sports. I really do. But when it comes down to it, man, football has a place for every kid, whether it be the smallest kid on the team. He can kick, he can hold. the biggest kid that, you know what, didn't get to do anything else growing up, man. He becomes a lineman because he's nasty, and that's how I started. I was the short little chubby kid, but you know what, Damon needed a catcher and they needed a center. And next thing you know, I'm 23 years into high school coaching, and I can't imagine myself doing anything else. It's just a beautiful game. And you know, one last thing about, you know, the coaches and clinics and things like that. When I was a young coach, I didn't get this, and I know there's guys out there that are like this now. I wanted to beat everybody. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I want to beat you. It's not like that.
I agree.
Everybody
totally.
is in the job. They're doing the same thing. They're trying to mentor kids. One of the best things I think now is I think football coaches are trying to make the entire kid versus just making them a football player. You know, helping them, because, man, some of these kids have rough lives, man. They don't have a great home life. They don't have this. That's another thing. I hate the Rona. Like, when it shut down, I giggled that I came back fat. Some of them came back skinny. Well, they came back skinny because they didn't have the regular food that they're going to get at school. You know, and I think we forget that. So I really respect all the coaches out there, whether you run a wing tee, a double tight, or you run spread and shred them like we do. It doesn't matter. We're all doing it for the right reasons.
I mean, I agree with that. You know, I used to be a pro wrestler, right?
I
So we
do.
finished up with our hush, which is my old calling card I used to call the ring with. Are you ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Right.
Hush! 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 Thank you all. We'll see you next week.
Oh, I love it.